Well, the Dunkley by-election is shaping up to be a hot one. If the media are to be believed, this is something of a referendum on the leadership of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and certainly a referendum on the impact of the current cost of living crisis on his popularity. Well, one of the people that is in the mix, that is in the muck and the rough and the tumble of the Dunkley by-election, is the Libertarian Party candidate, Chrysten Abraham, and she joins me right now on the Aussie Wire. Chrysten, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Topher.
My first question is, what madness must have possessed you to decide to get into politics? Why would someone, you seem to be a sane human being. You had a perfectly valuable and valid life prior to politics. Why would you throw all of that away and get involved in politics?
I feel like I have no choice, to be completely honest. It's my future that the two-party duopoly is messing up, and I don't have kids yet, but it's a future that I have concerns for if I do have kids. So at least if I do choose to have kids in the future, I can go, well, I'm doing everything to make a change. I'm doing everything to make a better future. But when people say, okay, well, it's your third run at it, you're a sucker for punishment, I go, yep. A little bit of an idiot, but I know that what I want my future to be, and I know what I want Australia to look like in the future, and the seat of Dunkley as well. We are such a great community down here. We are such a intertwined community that, small businesses do thrive down here, and the constant government intervention just makes it really hard for people like myself, young people, or just standard business owners or everyday individuals to prosper.
Well, I really resonate with what you said. I must be a bit of a glutton for punishment as well. I've been a political commentator for 15 years, and I did actually run for the Senate for the Libertarian Party, the same party that you're running for in Tasmania at the last federal election. So I do understand the desire to make a difference. You mentioned the two-party duopoly. Something caught my eye this week. New polling has come out actually just in the last few days showing that the Liberal Party has overtaken the Labor Party as the two-party preferred. But what actually caught my attention is that between them, they have only about 70% of the vote, which means that there's about 30%, perilously close to 1/3 of all voters that actually don't want either Liberal or Labor. What's the response you're getting from the electorate as you try and offer a viable, a genuine alternative?
Absolutely. And when I've been campaigning, so before pre-poll opened, when I've been campaigning at supermarkets, I've been telling them, if you're mad at both Labor and Liberal, I'm who you set your protest vote with. And they need alternatives. And the problem that we find is institutionalized voters. And I did speak about this with a different podcast, but I spoke about how there is almost like a footy team loyalty with these parties. And in actual fact, we should be voting out people that don't meet the required standard. We should be voting out people that don't meet what we want as our representatives. And these institutionalized voters are the only reason that I believe that two-party duopoly has not fallen over yet. We're not a party that forms government, but change doesn't happen overnight, and it starts with one vote at a time, then it starts with one election at a time. And we're seeing those waves. We're seeing those changes. When I ran in the federal election, I got about 2.5%. And when I ran in the state election, I, nearly cracked my 4%.
Wow.
And this time, we're absolutely hoping to do better. And I have a profile down in, the Dunkley electorate. And people are crying out. People are crying out that they're not happy with the Labor and Liberal Party and how they go about things. They're not happy with the candidates that have been provided by the Labor and Liberal Party. And I am a principled alternative that is willing and wants to be the voice for Dunkley to ensure that we get a better future and have a better future for our area.
Well, I want to talk about that principled alternative in just a moment, but I cannot resist the temptation to talk about the Labor candidate for just a moment. It seems as though she has been attracting attention for all the wrong reasons. She doesn't even have unified support from within her own party. And just recently, she made headlines for saying that her own electorate, the people that she is trying to win over to vote for her, are actually white supremacists because they voted in the majority for no during the Voice campaign. I am, of course, paraphrasing. That was not her exact words. What does it say to you that you have a mainstream political, but this is what most people would consider one of the big two, one of the footy teams, as you've so correctly pointed out. This is the best candidate that they can offer, instead of maybe a little bit of humility, maybe a little bit of, that policy proposal, what we wanted to do wasn't actually maybe the right thing. she's turning around and blaming the very electorate that she now wants to vote for her. That's the best candidate they've got?
I actually don't know if that's the best candidate that they have. There was someone that I met in the state election from the Labor Party that I actually thought they were going to put her up, and I told her that to her face. I thought that this woman would actually be an outstanding Labor candidate, even though I don't agree with the Labor Party in any way, shape, or form. There are good ones here and there. And that person should absolutely have been the candidate. She has a profile in the community. She is passionate and a confident speaker. I won't say her name to throw her under the bus, but in terms of the candidate that they've selected, and the late Peter Murphy was a pillar of our community, and the Labor Party does sometimes put up good candidates, and Peter Murphy was one of them. Apparently, it was Peter Murphy's pick that chose her, and that they are campaigning on continuing on Peter's legacy, which is, sometimes when voters are coming up to the polling booth and they're saying, vote to continue on Peter's legacy, I think that's a little bit like they're using the name in vain, to be completely honest, because Peter worked hard for this community. She was enshrined into this community, and to just kind of fly on those coattails, I think, is disrespectful, to be completely honest.
Yeah, wow. Look, I want to change the subject a little bit and go halfway around the world to Argentina. We have, for the first time in my lifetime, someone under the banner of Libertarian as a head of state. We're watching Javier Milei taking a chainsaw to the public service. He's dramatically cutting taxes. He's literally turned the entire financial situation for the Argentinian government around in a matter of months, gone from deep in deficits that have run for decades and indeed, I believe, about a century. And he's now flipped that on its head, and they're now actually able to run a surplus for this year. What would a libertarian, if the libertarians got to take over the world, you know the song, "If I Ruled the World, Every Day Would Be the First Day of Spring"? That's a terrible idea, by the way, because it means that there's never a harvest, so everyone starves. So, and that's central planning for you in a nutshell, right? Right there in that song, central planning illustrated. What does a libertarian politician actually want? What would you do if you actually had the power to do it?
If I was elected for the seat of Dunkley, or
if you ruled the world? If you could reshape the world in your own image or in the image that you believe is best, what does that even look like?
Well, as a libertarian, I wouldn't want to rule the world because I don't think that there should be a ruler. In terms of what that means, it means having smaller governments. It means having localized, those bodies, localized groups that represent their community, and they're able to do the best for their community. Similar to body corporates that we have in unit blocks, which are generally people, part of that block, making the decisions that best represent that block, and fights for those people within their area. I wouldn't want a ruler of the world, but I definitely would want people to not be held by the government's throttle, held by the government's hand in having their lives controlled by the government.
Well, you've passed the Libertarian Purity test. I threw the test out there, and you said, I don't want to rule the world. That's the only acceptable answer. So, Chrysten, you're fighting here. This is your third election. Obviously, you were not successful in the previous two at actually getting elected. There's no guarantee that you're going to be successful this time. So there must be something bigger at play here. There must be some bigger vision that you have for what libertarianism could become, the Libertarian Party, what it could become, something that's beyond just yourself and any political aspirations that you have. Let's just cast our minds forward, let's say 10, 15, 20 years, where people are now building on the foundation that you're helping to lay right now. What's the future for Australia that you would like to see, the future for libertarianism in this country that you would like to see?
I would like the duopoly removed for the Labor-Liberal duopoly that we have. And I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we will see one of those parties fall over and we will see a new party coming up to be that true opposition. And I genuinely do believe that is the Libertarian Party. Change doesn't happen overnight. And part of me going for my third time around is about ensuring that I do continue on that change and I do continue to outline this message to our community and bring people across the libertarian philosophy. When I started watching David and Tim in David Limbrook and Tim Quilty in State Parliament through the pandemic, I realized that I had been a libertarian my whole life. It's
Wow.
just that someone hadn't spoken to me about libertarianism. And I plan on, waking those people up across the electorate, across Australia, because the libertarian message is the only suitable solution that we have going forward and for how the situation we find ourselves in now.
Look, I resonate so much with that story. I was developing and evolving as a 20-year-old man, and I realized I was no longer a conservative. I was raised as a conservative, and I realized I was no longer a conservative, but I didn't know what I was. And it took a man by the name of Tim Andrews to get alongside me and actually help me to understand libertarianism. So I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I wish more strength to your arm, every success in this election, and I thank you for the work that you're doing. Chrysten Abraham, candidate in the seat of Dunkley, how can people get in touch with you, perhaps stand on a polling booth for you if someone wanted to either lived in Dunkley and they wanted to support you or they wanted to come into Dunkley to help you on polling on the polling booths and on the election day? Where would they contact you? Where would they find you?
So the Libertarian Party website. Now, don't get confused with the Victorian Libertarian Party website and the National Libertarian Party website. They are able to donate, volunteer through that, and someone from my team will get in contact with them. They can always reach out to myself through Facebook, or if that means reaching out to David through David Limbrick through his Facebook.
Sure.
We will always get in touch with everyone. Or if it's easier to find David Limbrick's details on the State Parliament website, then you can also do that. That will get passed on to me and my team.
Brilliant. Chrysten Abraham, thank you so much for joining us on the Aussie Wire, and go well.
Thank you, Topher.